Welcome to Living the Smarter Science of Slim, where we provide a scientifically proven lifestyle for long-term health and fat loss by eating more and exercising less, but smarter.
Eat smarter, exercise smarter, live better. I am so ready for that.
Hey everyone, Jonathan Bailor back with another bonus Smarter Science of Slim podcast. Very, very excited to share today's guest with you because she has a special place in my heart, not only because the work she does is profound and chill-inducing, and we'll get into why in a moment, but she is also the first person ever, to my knowledge, to reference the Smarter Science of Slim in her very own book. So she sent me a copy, and I said, hey, look, she cited my book in her book. So if for no other reason, I'm thankful for that. But we should all be much more thankful of our guest today, which is Brenda Wollenberg. She has a long, many-decade history in social work, so helping people deal with obviously very tough situations. And then she turned her passions to nutrition, and she is a holistic nutritionist and has she's taken those two diverse skill sets of social work and holistic nutrition and written a book called Overweight Kids in a Toothpick World. She has a website called kidsinbalance.net, and she has taken on the Herculean task of helping families deal with the childhood obesity and disease epidemic. And wow, talk about impactful social work. Brenda, thank you and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Good to be here.
Brenda, what inspired you first to go into social work and then to redirect or augment your efforts with nutrition?
A lot of people end up in social work because they come from slightly dysfunctional families. So I would say part of it is that, okay? But the other part of it is simply just really believing that there can be certain practices put into place that can really change your life. So that started off with the whole, emotional, psychological way that we view things, the way that we can grow and develop. I particularly enjoyed working with children. When I was in social work, worked a lot with fairly disturbed adolescents and really enjoyed helping them grow and move. But I also then became a very sick, very unhealthy social worker just due to the stress of the job, the long hours, the massive, now that I'm aware of it, shots of cortisol going through your system on numerous times in the day. So I began to do some research for myself and get healthy. And as that changed, thought, man, I really need to blend these two. You can't just do one or the other. We got to be mind and body healthy. So that's the impetus for Kids in Balance and Imbalance.
And now, Brenda, how much of your time and mind share is spent? I mean, obviously you have a holistic approach, but is your practice now primarily focused on nutrition, or is it really the whole person still?
It really is the whole person. Like technically, I no longer practice social work, but there would not be a day that goes by in my practice that I'm not using principles I was trained in to work with people looking at, say, the connection with food and emotion, some of the foundational reasons why they have difficulty reaching the goals they say are important to them. So it's absolutely holistically intertwined. I've given up trying to separate which is which and just go with it.
And the thing that struck me about your book, Overweight Kids in a Toothpick World, and this struck me way before I actually saw the reference to my own work, so I liked it before I saw that.
Oh, thank you.
And actually, folks, this is a true story, is I read Brenda's book on an airplane trip back home, and I had a young member of my family who was struggling with overweight, and I handed her mother a copy of Brenda's book. So I'm not sure you could give a higher endorsement than that. So
That's pretty impressive.
Salute Overweight Kids in a Toothpick World. But now, Brenda, I want to give the readers a bit of a gift. Help them to understand your approach, the approach you present in this book, and why it is different. Because it is. Health books are very derivative often. I found your health book not to be derivative.
Thank you. I think the primary reason that book works is that it is an outworking of practical application. I'm a huge fan of research and education, to my detriment sometimes. And so there's certainly an educational component in the book and in the Kids in Balance programs that we run. I believe that you have to tap into that right brain sympathetic side and, actually help people realize that they're are some foundational underpinnings for the reasons I would be suggesting they do something different. I think if you don't have a really good reason or like a strong why for the choices that you're moving towards, then when things get shaky and something else comes up and you weren't planning for that situation to occur, you kind of lose it. So definitely there's an educational component. But the other aspects of that are woven through the book and through our program are much more to do with the emotional or kind of left brain side of us. So I really infuse it, I think, with hope, because I really believe that people can change, that there is lots of history of that in the people that I've worked with and just in history in general, that people can learn different ways of doing things. Secondly, again, tapping into that kind of, right side of our brain is, and this is, you're going to get the hippie social worker trained in the 1980s here. Okay, I keep trying to think of a better word for this, but I haven't yet, which is simply empowerment. If I say to people, like, what kind of legacy do you want to leave for your kids? What are you currently doing well in your family? Like, how can we, no one is really starting at zero. Most of us have made some movements towards increased health and wellness and towards, a healthier weight range. So, what do you want to pass down to your kids? How can I help you move with that? So really empowering people. I think many parents today, they're just confused. Like, they go and stand in Chapsters or they go onto Amazon. They go, oh my goodness, like, there's 18 million books here that I could use that would help me, learn how to, better raise my children. And we forget that intuitively we actually have a lot of information that just resonates, and we just kind of go, okay, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Let me think. We didn't used to eat this way. I often cite your, history of eating thing, and like, man alive, for only 3 seconds you've been eating something like this, and only like 1 second for anything like this. People can resonate with that and go back to what their grandparents ate or their great grandparents ate. So a lot of that hope and then empowerment, and then the last part of that right brain side would be courage. I say to people, if what you're doing is not getting you where you want to go, it's time to make a switch and do a lot of, again, educational, but connection with, understand that big industry, food industry, these people do not care about you. I'm sorry, they and that's reality. Like, they have, if they're publicly traded, their goal is to produce income. They have to. They're mandated to do that. But they really don't care about the health of your 10-year-old or your 13-year-old, which is why they can say to you, a pop a day is a good option or whatever. So, be courageous, because you are going to be swimming upstream. And I guess my goal is to have way more families swimming upstream, so that becomes the norm.
And what struck me also about your work, Brenda, is your recommendations are also just not these cookie. I mean, the standard, right? The standard recommendation is that kids just need to move more, and that's not necessarily wrong. Like, that's true, but you go, like, what are the things you see in the standard generic prescription for childhood obesity that makes you shake your head and say either that's incomplete or that's wrong?
This is a 3-hour interview, right? No, I'm kidding. I think the main things are, there's just not a recognition of the headspace that kids are in, and the reality that the whole calories in, calories out, formula that you so lovely, in a lovely manner, discount over and over again in your book, is that doesn't work. And so when families are trying to, I won't name the different programs, but virtually, as far as I know, mine's the only program that doesn't go with a moderate, calorie reduction, low fat, bump up the exercise, get your child out every day for an hour and a half, whatever. Like, it doesn't make sense. That's not how we used to live. It's not practical in today's world. And so, people try that for a while. They have kids that are complaining about them. They have, complaining about it. They really don't enjoy the food that they're eating. The idea of getting a child that's 10 years old to the gym, for an hour to an hour and a half a day, this is not simply a reality. So those programs may work for a time with a lot of almost like whip cracking, if it were, of the parent. but they're not, again, in some of your terms, they're not sustainable, and they are not based on real life. So I'd much rather people learned how to, eat real food as close as possible to its original form. I don't want them to become food fanatics. They need to have room for celebration. The food pyramid, food health pyramid that I've designed, you may have seen it in the book. The very top category is actually some celebration foods, and families need to figure out ways to incorporate that in ways that are healthy and life-giving long-term. Okay.
And Brenda, you not only have clinical practice with this, but you have personal experience with this, right?
Right, exactly. Multitudes of experience with this. We have 5 children, and they range in age from 17 to 29. And kind of going back to what you asked me about what would be different about some of these other programs, we have children that are very different body or metabolic types. So again, one of the challenges that I find with many of the programs that are out there for children who are carrying extra weight or unwell and have lack of energy or whatever is that they're a one-size-fits-all program. And I speak in copious amounts of experience that not one single one of my children is genetically identical to the other 4 that we have, So learning the hard way, trying to be a vegetarian family for a number of years when it was very clear that my husband, Germanic background, lived on meat 18 times a day, was probably not a good candidate for a raw vegan lifestyle. Okay. Those were huge learning curves for me, 20, 25 years ago. And then seeing those differences genetically in our children, being able to feed the ones that need to have a much higher percentage of, say, healthy fats and proteins, the couple that are a little more like me that can tolerate a few more of the complex, starchier foods, but just really helping our children and then, in turn, my clients figure out the fuel mix that their body is best designed to function on. That's not common. You don't see that in books. It's do this, get your child eating this, so many servings of this a day, and if they're hungry, tough luck. If whatever, it's just like we're not helping kids to be in tune with their body. We're not helping them to figure out what gives them energy, what balances their moods. We're not empowering them to take a better hold of their own health.
And, Brenda, I'm not a parent myself, but I can imagine, and sometimes I feel uncomfortable talking about this because I'm not a parent. So can you help me, help others, and help our listeners? How do we balance? Because from the outside looking in as a non-parent, just this weekend I went to the waterfront in Kirkland, Washington, where I live, and the number of children who were significantly overweight is just heartbreaking. And I don't. Like, how do you balance? It's you don't want to guilt trip people, but it is like, I mean, if you have a child who's overweight, it's just such a travesty in terms of their metabolic health and their emotional health and their social health. But you can't just guilt trip everyone. So how do we avoid just making everyone feel terrible about themselves and focus instead on solving the problem?
I think the first thing is to really understand that there's probably very few parents worldwide who don't want the best for their kids, who don't want them to be healthy and have lots of energy and not be carrying, extra weight, et cetera, et cetera. Like I don't think I've ever found a parent who didn't care about that. But the problem is that there's a lot of confusion. And so I would say the first thing to do is to really come alongside parents who have kids that are, overweight or obese and help them understand that you understand how they feel, that they're probably confused. There's probably a lot of guilt tripping already going on. They don't need us to add to that. And for many of them, when I work with a child, I work with a family. So for many of them, there are patterns of dysfunctional eating or a lack of understanding of eating in parents as well. So they are modeling things that for them sometimes are hard to give up because they have their own emotional connections to food or their own things that they're unraveling around why they go to certain things for comfort or whatever. So for sure, having them understand that we get their pain and that we aren't judging them and that we actually want to help them unravel that themselves so they can then be a more helpful model and set better practices in place in their family.
Brenda, I think you hit the nail on the head there because, yes, what parent is going to knowingly poisoned. I mean, parents don't give their children cigarettes, so that's why I've always struggled with it. It is a knowledge problem, because if you know something is bad for your child, truly bad for your child, I have yet to ever meet a parent who hands their child a cigarette. Even though it might be lovely and it's a celebration, you still don't give the child cigarettes because you know it's bad. But I've met many, many parents who every edible product they give to their child because they do believe it's healthy, because the package says it is, or it's fortified, or it gives you energy to play, or it's got healthy whole grains in it. So how do we combat that? They are doing the best with the information they've been given. It's just the information they've been given is either from corrupt sources or it's just bad information.
Correct. Exactly. And that's where we go back to, the education part. And we actually work with parents to help them understand that, but then we give them tools so that they can actually put that into place with their children. So, for example, if I'm teaching in an elementary setting, I bring in activity centers. And so we'll have an activity center that is a label reading activity. But unlike, typical, looking for the healthy heart signal or whatever recommended by the American Dietary Association or whatever, we look at ingredients, and we're not looking at calorie count. We're looking at, is it real food? We're looking at, are the ingredients in that we don't recognize? Or we're looking at, you'd be very happy to hear this, protein to carbohydrate ratio. We're looking at, where's the fat coming from? So we're actually teaching people to how to teach their children to be little, sheriffs in the grocery market. Okay, and again, even within that, we'll often do a kind of like a traffic light thing where we'll have a red placemat and a green placemat and a yellow placemat, and have them put it down based on who they are. So for someone that is an extreme protein type, even a really healthy quinoa, kind of a dish would not necessarily be something that they could have very often. And so they start to learn also that in their family, maybe someone might be able to eat something a little more often than they do. So we'll do activities like that again are things that parents can do in the home with their younger children. If they have teens, again, when I'm working, I'll resort, having worked a lot with teens in social work and then having obviously my own, I will resort to absolutely tapping into what is primarily important to them. And a lot of tongue-in-cheek stuff when I'm teaching in high schools around, okay, the name I talk today is how to clear up your skin, look good to the people you want to look good to, and maybe get an A in your personal planning class. Okay, so you got to tap into what is important to teenagers, and they are not thinking, oh my goodness, or seriously, are you telling me if I eat really well right now that when I'm 50, I can run a half marathon, I'm going to look super amazing, and I'm not going to have joint pains? They're thinking like, Friday, maybe if this is Thursday. So we have to recognize that and give them things that are short term, recognize that they don't have the same ability to delay gratification. They need more of a, believe it or not, they need their parents to actually parent and, not have certain things in the house and, be able to actually set some boundaries. I'll tell you a quick little story. I had a client come in with their family, and she was just saying that, one of her children was eating a lot more potato chips lately than normal. They were kind of concerned about that. And I knew them well enough to be able to tongue-in-cheek say to this little 8-year-old, so do you have a job since I saw you last? And he goes, no, I don't have a job. I go, is you now in charge of buying the groceries in your house? He goes, I don't buy the groceries in my house. And the mom was able to sit there and go, bingo, yes, the reason we're having so many potato chips in the house is because I'm buying them and bringing them in. So being able to help parents see that they do need to parent. They don't have to be their kid's best friend. They need to get them through the healthy eating and lifestyle, the things, the same way they get them through doing their chores, doing their homework, those kind of things as well.
I love it. Well, Brenda, what's next for you and the Kids in Balance effort?
Well, currently we mainly do on-location programs and some online programs, but this fall is a really big push to go digital. We have lots of people in different parts of the country. We've got some interest in Mexico, a Spanish-speaking population. There's a lot of childhood obesity happening in Mexico. Their rates are kind of coming up to ours. So we're looking at moving our program similar to the way you do, podcasts and being able to have people get information more easily accessible online from their home, but still support them, still offer a nutritionist to work with them online at the same time. So that's kind of where our next step is going.
I love it. I love it. Well, folks, while Brenda is putting together her plan to heal the world, which is a wonderful, wonderful plan. In the meantime, she's taken great strides, and you can enjoy them yourself by picking up a copy of her book, which is Overweight Kids in a Toothpick World, which, again, I can say personally I have read and given to someone in my family who is struggling with these issues. Can't give a higher endorsement than that, so I would recommend picking up a copy. You could also check out her website at kidsinbalance.net. Brenda, thank you so much for all that you do. It's been an absolute pleasure.
You're welcome. Really enjoyed it.
Everyone, her name is Brenda Wollenberg, and I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. And please remember, this week and every week after, eat smarter, exercise smarter, and live better. Chat with you soon.
Wait, don't stop listening yet. If you like the podcast and if there's other ways we can help you, please join us in the Smarter Science of Slim support group, which is freely available at the Smarter Science of Slim website, smarterscienceofslim.com. There you'll find all kinds of free recipes and success stories and just all kinds of fun stuff, like how to help your kids go sane and just great community content.
And just one last thing before you go, if you wouldn't mind heading over to iTunes and up onto Amazon.com and leaving us a review, and then going over to Facebook and liking us, we would hugely appreciate it.